This video addresses the implications from this data. When we are looking at a school's PASS data, you must remember that all we can see on a report are names and numbers. No one knows the students in your school better than you. And so it's only when your knowledge and expertise is brought together with the data that we can start to analyse the implications for teaching and learning effectively. PASS can help you here, as your agreement provides you with access to the PASS online intervention system. This is a resource containing a large number of intervention strategies that are linked to the PASS factors. Note, it is important to point out that this is only a resource, and it is neither a guaranteed answer to your problems, nor is it a replacement for your professional expertise. You start by entering some personal details as well as the percentile scores into the system, either for an individual or for a group. You can choose whether your report suggestions are driven by the percentile scores, that is, comparing a student to the national population, or relative strengths and weaknesses, identifying the high and low points within any individual profile. The system will then produce an automatic report for you based on your choice of comparison. The report you get will highlight high scoring factors and low scoring factors. As you can see here, the example shows areas of strength and areas for development. The report will provide you with a set of suggestions for intervention strategies that you can consider using. You will see that there are two groups of suggestions. The first set are categorised as national. These are strategies that schools have used before and found to be successful. The second group is categorised as random, and these are exactly that. Therefore, they are suggestions, not guarantees. Further down the report, you will also find strategies that can be used in conjunction with two different factors. Now let's look at how to manage your PASS data. Here are some questions for you to think about in terms of who you'll share the data with, how and why. We cannot go through all of them here, but let's look for a moment at the last two groups on the screen. It is important that all staff who are involved in teaching and learning in your school have access to the data that is relevant to the students in their care. In other words, the suggestion is that not necessarily to release the full report to all staff, but rather to make available to each staff member the data that is appropriate for them, so that they can access it easily and won't risk getting distracted by data for other departments or classes. For example, with a spreadsheet or Excel data, you can divide the Excel report into chunks, such as year groups or tutor groups, and share it in that way. Similarly, we don't recommend that you automatically share this data with all pupils. Naturally, some will be curious to know how their assessment went, so it's fine to let them see their profile, and this may lead to a useful discussion. In addition, there will be individuals and groups for whom you have concerns, and here you will certainly want to share the data. But please do so carefully, probably starting the discussion with simple explanations of what the factors mean and using this to stimulate the conversation. For parents and carers, PASS data can often be a really useful way of starting what may be a difficult discussion. Remember, PASS data is not your subjective view of someone's son or daughter, but rather it is their own view of themselves as learners. Quite often, you'll find that parents and carers will recognise their child, and this can be a good way to lead into a discussion about how you can work together for the benefit of the student. For the school senior leadership team, PASS data can be very helpful when looking at the staff development and CPD. It can help you identify any gaps in teaching and learning, especially when used in conjunction with other data, such as attainment data and ability data. Self-evaluation is an ongoing process for all schools and their staff, and PASS data provides invaluable information, especially when considering answers to these questions. Let's look for a moment at school inspection. This quote is from a school inspection report that was published in 2015 and has a broadly similar focus to the previous year's report. It highlights the areas that inspectors will specifically be looking at. And we hope that you can see how your PASS data provides you with hard evidence for the inspection team, showing that you are listening to your pupils and taking action based on their feedback. If attendance is a concern in your school, then this research will be of interest to you. We surveyed 1,500 Year 7 students and recorded their Factor 8 score, attitude to attendance. Then we went back a year later and measured their actual attendance, now in Year 8. Of those who had a low attitude to attendance in Year 7, 9 out of 10 had started to miss school in Year 8. The message here is clear. By using PASS with Year 7, after they have had time to settle into their new school, you can quickly identify those who have a low attitude to attendance and start to work with them to find out the cause for this low attitude. There may be many different causes, but you have an opportunity to intervene before their attitude gets to their feet and they start walking out of the door. If you are a primary school, where it's much more difficult for children to truant, the data on your Year 6 students can be vitally important to the secondary school that your pupils are feeding into. So here I've sorted my sample tutor group on Factor 8, attitudes to attendance, so that I can see quickly who needs to be considered for support. Just looking at this data across all factors for a moment, and bearing in mind that this is a sample data, isn't it interesting how many of the other reds have come to the top, even though I've only sorted the data for Factor 8? If something similar happens when you sort your own data, then you should take this into account when planning intervention strategy schemes. In some instances, there is much insight to be gained by comparing and contrasting specific PASS factors with other data, for example, attainment data. This helps to build a more holistic picture of each student. In this example, we're exploring the concept of fragile learners and show how insight drawn through PASS data compared to attainment data can illuminate fragile learners. In every classroom, there will be a group of what we call fragile learners. Or you may have your own term for these students, who may sometimes lack resilience when under pressure. They are the ones who are attaining well, and all indications are that they will do well in whatever tests are ahead of them. However, when the test is taken or the exam sat, they don't do as well as expected. The real difficulty is in trying to identify which of your pupils are fragile, because if you can identify them, you can do something with them. But they're very hard to spot. Well, we have a suggestion for you to help you. In the example here, I've taken some attainment data and plotted it against the data from either Factor 2 or Factor 3, which measures their self-concept as a learner. Next, the data is plotted into a scatter graph, which spreadsheets such as Excel can do for you. The students we are trying to identify, the potential fragile learners, will be in the orange or bottom right square. Their attainment scores show they are doing well, but it is their PASS data that will show that they may not have the personal resilience to carry them through a wobble, whether that is caused by something that has happened inside or outside the school, or maybe just the anxiety about the test that they know that is coming up. By providing support at this stage, you have a chance of helping these students learn how to cope and ensure that they get the right attainment results, whether that is SATs, GCSE, or just an internal test. Finally, here are some thoughts on other areas where you can use your PASS data to support your students. Bear in mind that PASS will not tell you exactly what a student's problem is, but it will give you an indication of where to look, and then your intervention planning can be much more effective and efficient. Thank you for watching this video.